uploads and integrate this into our application. What are some scenarios of applications we might need to build where we need to enable users to upload files? Yep, so even in your content management system, absolutely, we're going to have people saying, hey, I don't just want text, I want to be able to upload images. What other kinds of things or other sites have you used? What sites do you use that let you upload files, and what types of files do they let you upload? Yep, so you can upload documents. Facebook, what kinds of things can we upload on Facebook? Yep, so multimedia, typically, right? So to create a gallery on YouTube, we upload videos. On Blackboard, you can upload any kind of files. I mean, you guys all uploaded zip files last night, right? So we all have file uploads. So file uploads typically work the same way, right? Site or displayed, whatever, right? From Blackboard, for example, you guys upload your files so I can access them. Facebook, people upload photos so those photos can be displayed. So the process of doing pretty much any type of file is the same. I've kind of laid it out here. This is how it works with PHP. We're going to need a form, and our form is going to have an input type we haven't used before. It's going to be an input type of file. Okay. What does this HTML, this input type equals file, what will that actually look like in the browser? If we put one of those on an HTML page or PHP page, what does the user see? How does this actually get rendered? Yeah, exactly. It actually looks slightly different in different browsers. We'll look at it in Internet Explorer, in Chrome, and in Firefox. But it basically gives the user the ability to, to trigger a browse. So when they hit browse, what happens then? Sorry? Yeah, and what's showed on that window, Henvinder? Like what did they see in the window? Yeah, you see your local operating system. So the input type equals file is one of the very few HTML components that is not completely dumb. It actually has some functionality. It can do something, right? And it will work on any operating system, doesn't matter. We have that input type equals file. We click it, it opens a file dialog box so we can pick a file. Now we may have multiple file inputs on the same page. For example, an old friend of mine, he's a painter, so I built a website for him. So what he wanted to do, originally I built a page where he could upload a photo of a painting, put in a title, put in the dimensions and the price of it. And I actually recently, he emailed me and he said, can you make it so instead of one file upload, I can upload 3 files? I want the main image upload, then I want to be able to upload a thumbnail image, a small one for my thumbnail page, and then I want a full screen image so someone could see it and fill their page. So what I had to do was add 3 of these inputs on the page. Where there was 1 before, I had to add 2 more. So there was main image, now there's one called thumbnail, and there's one called full size, I think.
And you see it manipulated through CSS, the size?
You can manipulate it through CSS if you want to, yes. We can control how we display it, yeah, if we want to. So that's the first thing we're going to need. We're also going to need a special attribute in our HTML form tag. Right now, all the forms we've been building, we've been setting 2 attributes, right? We set the method, which up till now is always post, and we set the action, so what page is going to process the form. We're still going to need those, but when we do file uploads, we actually need this 3rd attribute, which is ENC type. Anybody have an idea what ENC type might stand for? Close, good guess. It's not encryption type. Yeah, you got it, Ted. It's the encoding type. So let's think about what happens here. In fact, I meant to actually open this up. So how does the file actually get copied? Because remember, we're not using FTP. We're not giving our client a username and password to the server to upload a file. We're transferring these files over HTTP. not going to go through all of this. This link is here. These kind of notes, they're on Blackboard. I uploaded this little slide presentation, but there's a few things in here. So we've kind of talked about some examples. So we have input type equals file, and our form includes the encoding type. What this attribute does when we add encoding type, so let's say we're uploading a picture on Facebook, right? It has whatever name, whatever name our phone happens to give it. abc123.jpg maybe is our file name. So we have this file maybe on our own machine, or maybe it's on our mobile device, and we want to upload it. So here's what happens. On Facebook, I'm sure we can find it, may as well log in. They'll have a form that'll include that encoding type, most likely. Going out a photo. Right, so here's my pick JPEG. Well, it's a bit of a mess in here. Let's see if we can find a form tag. There's a lot of stuff going on. Okay, you know what? Maybe that's not a good example. Let's try. Actually, I'm going to go in here for a minute. I'll go in on Blackboard. So here's a browse button. Here's my browse button, right? So if I click, actually, this takes me to a new page. Let's view the source here for a minute. We'll do a. Let's see if there's. Here. So here's our form. And here is our encoding type attribute. Okay, so without it, here's what happens. So when I browse to this file, what the encoding type does is it will convert this file into binary code. Right? Which is just as a representation in ones and zeros and bytes of that file. This binary gets transferred from my client, gets copied to the server. That's what happens when you upload a file through Blackboard or upload a photo in Facebook. Your file gets converted to binary with that multi-part form data encoding, and then on the server it gets decompiled from binary back into the original file. So it gets converted here and then converted back to ABC. Without that encoding type attribute, this binary conversion never happens, and if the binary conversion never happens, your file doesn't get copied. That's how the file is copied, as a stream of ones and zeros, and then basically put back together in its original format on the other end. Okay? So this attribute is what allows that encoding to happen. If we do a file upload without that, we don't get an error, but there will be no file on the server. Nothing will get uploaded. It'll just be blank. So these are the two things we'll need in our form. The next thing that happens, the way that file uploads work with PHP is different than some languages. When we do ASP.NET, if we upload a file, when we upload it, we just set the folder where we want to save that file. It goes there automatically. PHP has kind of an intermediate step. Rather than us being able to say, hey, we want to upload this to, say, the images folder, PHP automatically saves the file in a temporary spotting cache on the server. And we can't control where that goes. That file will stay in cache for a period of time. I think it's 15 or 20 minutes, and then it gets deleted automatically. So what we have to do is there's a function that will tell us where the file was saved. And if we want to save it to an images folder, we'll have to move it from the temp location into the final directory where we want that file to stay. So the PHP file upload object lets us check all these things. I know that's a little hard to see. So when we upload a file, we have the ability to check things like the name of the file, what type of file it is. For example, on Facebook, if I try and upload, let's What do you think will happen if I try and upload here? I click add photo and choose a Word document. Let me try here. Let's try and upload that. So I upload a doc, right? It's going to check the file type as well. And it also checked the size. They're not going to let us upload more than 4 megs. So many times we'll want to check the file size. Blackboard doesn't, right? You can upload you could upload a 100 meg assignment. Blackboard will let you do it. But many sites where we're giving users file uploads, we may want to restrict the maximum or even the minimum we may want to do. So we have access to these properties with PHP, the name, the type, the size, and then the temp name. So that's the cached location of that file. And every time we upload a file, that cache location in PHP, it changes. It's just randomly assigned from the server. So after we upload it, we can look at the type. One of the other things we want to do is we want to rename the file when it gets uploaded. Why might we want to change the name? User uploads ABC123. Why do we not necessarily want to save it on the server with that exact same name? Okay, that could be, because yeah, we know spaces are a problem in URL paths. Why else? Is that? Very true. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's true, Tyler. Sorry? Yep, so maybe we want to make the name more search engine friendly.
Is it like a unique identifier?
Well, okay, let's think about it. What would happen if we all logged into Facebook right now and we all uploaded a photo called profile.jpg? What could potentially happen? How do you Well, it could be. The default behavior with PHP and Apache is if 2 users upload a file with the same name to the same directory, if Ted uploads profile.jpg at 9:15 and ASAT uploads profile.jpg to the same folder at 9:16, the default behavior is ASAT's file is going to overwrite Ted's file. Right? Some servers won't do this. Different servers, some of them will, put like a bracket 1 at the end. But the default behavior of Apache and PHP is overwrite a file with the same name if it's in the same folder. So we'll look at how we want to uniquely name those files. So that way, if multiple users, imagine you all uploaded last night, assignment 2 part 1 to Blackboard. Imagine if Blackboard didn't find a way to uniquely name those files, right? Whoever uploaded last would have overwritten everybody else's. So we're going to want to come up with a little algorithm to make sure that when we upload a file, we'll maybe keep the name, but we want to put a unique identifier on it in addition. Okay. Doing it with search engines is also a great idea. So Tyler, for example, a site like these guys, I probably should do that. Right? They upload a whole bunch of images to a particular house in the control panel. What I should be doing is taking the name of the address and putting that at the beginning. That way, if they don't name them descriptively, I could name the images descriptively, which would be great for search engines. Probably something I should suggest to them we change. Okay, so let's do a really simple example first. All we're going to do is just upload any file, process it with PHP, and save it. We'll do that first. We'll get that working. Just an upload page, a save page. So those pages really won't be integrated into our beer store. Once we can upload files, what we're going to do, if I log back in, is on our beer page, when I add or edit a beer, I want a browse button here that will allow me to upload a logo. And when I hit save, it will save that file onto the server. And then when I come back and look at this page again, it's actually going to display the logo here. And if we have time, we're going to add another private page called a gallery, and we'll just display like a Facebook photo album, all of the images that have been uploaded. So we can display all the beer logos on a page. Okay. So let's make a new page for today. Make a new PHP file. We'll just call it upload.php. We don't need our auth, we don't need our header. This is just kind of like a demo page. Remember a few weeks when we did our header, we did page 1 and page 2 to look at how to require the header. So that's what we're going to do first. So we'll just put in a title here of upload. This is actually just going to be HTML only. We don't need any PHP on this file. So all we want is a form, a browse button, and a submit button. So put on a form. We use post as our method. And our action can be save upload.php. We'll put on a file upload box. So input, we'll use type equals file. And we have to give it a name. So I'll just call it maybe any underscore file. So this will generate the browse button, and when we click it, it opens, as Henvinder mentioned, it opens the file dialog box. Then we just need a button. Does upload. I won't bother with CSS, with Bootstrap, with anything else. So a basic form and a file input box. In my browser, it looks like this. I will put the code back. Now this input type equals file, it looks a little different in different browsers. So Firefox, it has a browse button. It says no file selected. Chrome, it says no file chosen. We have no control over this. This is just how the browsers implement it. I still have Internet Explorer. I don't even have Edge yet on this computer, which I never use, so I haven't bothered to upgrade. It looks like a text box with the browse button in Internet Explorer, but as soon as I click even there, I get my file dialog box. Okay. So it renders a little bit differently in different browsers. Still works the same way. We have the same functionality. We also need to set the encoding type. Otherwise, our file won't get converted to binary. If it doesn't get converted to binary, it doesn't get copied to the server. So we want to set the ENC type equals, and I just hit enter to select that option in my code editor, multi-part / form - data. So any form, any page we're going to allow users to upload to, it needs that attribute. And this page is done. That's all we need. So save your changes, load it in your browser, make sure that your page loads. Any questions so far about what's on here? We're good. If your page is done and it's uploaded and it looks okay, looks like mine, you see the browse button and the upload button, then you can go ahead and make a new file and call it save-upload. So this page is going to process our file upload. So make a second file and give it this name that you have in yellow that my editor's complaining about because I haven't built yet. So I'm going to make a new page, call it save upload. So what we want to do is check out the file, the name, the extension, the size, where it is in cache. And then when we save the file, we want to save it in a new subfolder of our site that we're going to call uploads. So we need to go to our lesson 10 folder on our operating system. And I want to make, we already have a script subfolder for our little JavaScript confirmation. I'm going to make a new folder and call it uploads. So any files we upload with this page will be saved. Rather than being saved with all our PHP pages, we're going to store them in a subfolder to keep them organized. We usually keep file uploads and our web pages separate. So just make an uploads folder, which by default will be blank. If you're working on DreamHost, you'll also need to make the DreamHost, you'll need to make that file on the server. So when the file's saved on the web server, it's saved into your lesson 10/uploads folder. So now on our save page, I'll open a set of PHP tags. First thing I'm going to do is create a variable called name. So what we want to get is the original name of the file. So whatever the file name is, the user uploads, we want to get it. Which object, which collection, when I type $_, which one of these objects will hold information about that upload? Usually we use which one of these to get form values. Usually we've used post. Now our form still uses post, but however, it's not get, it's a different one we haven't used before. Who said files? That's the one we want. We want to use the files collection. So this will give us information about any files that were uploaded on the previous page. Now, again, remember, we only have one file upload, but as I said in the example of my friend who's the artist, he's got 3, so we need to give it the name of the input. So we called it any file. Name equals any file. Now, this is a multi-dimensional array. Then within any file, we have several other properties we can access. And what we want here is the property called name. So that's built into PHP. This will tell us the original file name. So if we had 3 file uploads, we'd have files, file 1 name, files, file 2 name, files, file 3 name. And let's just print this out. We'll do this one step at a time. So grab the name of the file that was uploaded in the input called any file, store that in a variable called name, and print it out to the screen. So now we should be able to try this out, browse to any file in our operating system, and our save page should print out the name of that file. We'll try it. So I'm going to go back. I will pick anything, upload, interesting. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I didn't save my change. I'm missing my encoding type in my, actually, sorry, I didn't refresh it. So notice, actually, that's interesting that I missed that. I should do that again. So you notice on my form, without my encoding type, my save page says, hey, there is no file. Nothing got uploaded because my form was missing my encoding type attribute. If I go back and refresh, now I have my encoding type. That error should go away. So the error is gone. So without the encoding type, there's no file. If I can go back, and it doesn't have to be a JPEG, I can choose anything. I can choose a zip file. I can choose a Word document. And it reads the name of that file. So now let's check size. Our files collection has a size property. It will tell us how big that file is. We're just going to repeat what we did above, but we'll change name to size. You might, when you try this and refresh your page, re-upload a file, you may be a bit surprised by the size value. What do you notice about the size value when you run your page? You may not get the kind of value you're expecting. To save your change, try it out again. Go back to your upload, hit browse, click your upload button. Anush, what do you notice about the file size? It shows the file size. What type of value is the file size? It is numbers. You're close, ASAT. So I'm going to choose my document here. It's 161 kilobytes and upload. But notice it doesn't say 161. It's 164,864. So what units does that in? It's in bytes, right? So that's something we need to be careful of. If we say the limit, if we want the limit to be 4 megabytes, we can't limit it to 4,000. We need to make the limit 4 million. It's actually 1,024 bytes in a kilobyte. It's not 1 to 1,000. Okay, so if we're doing size checking with PHP, we need to note that the size will show in kilobytes. Sorry, in bytes, not in kilobytes. Okay. We also have access to the file type. Now this is a little bit tricky, the type. I'll show you why. So we're going to do the same thing. We'll get the file type and output it. And if we try uploading different file types, we're going to get a different value output here. A JPEG will be different from a PNG, which will be different from a Word document or PDF or zip file. So again, the exact same code, I've just substituted the word type and a variable called type, substituted that in for where we had size and name. So if I refresh, here's what a Word document, the type is application/MS Word. If I pick a newer version, let's say a docx file, notice it's x-MS Word. So if we only want to allow certain file types, we can check that. If I pick a picture, when I have a JPEG, I get image/JPEG. We can try a PNG file. I get image PNG. So let's say, so this is what Facebook did, right? When I went to Facebook and clicked add photo and picked a Word document, it said I wasn't allowed to upload it. It was checking my file type to make sure I was getting one of those. This method is not foolproof. This is similar kind of to where you were talking about earlier with our file names. Okay, watch what happens. So I'm going to go to, I'll go to my pictures. I'm going to create a new file. This is really a text file. Okay, so I'm going to open up my text file. Okay, so I have some text in this file. I'll close it. Now I'm going to rename it and change the extension. It looks like a JPEG, but it's not really a JPEG, right? This might be an executable with a virus. It might be a JavaScript that's really a JS, and I'm changing it to look like it. What's going to happen when I go and browse to that file? Right? Looks like an image. Is my type going to show as text, or is my type going to show as a JPEG? Right? Basically, that type, this code we've written, around this, there is a built-in function in PHP called MIME content type, and we pass in the name of the file. This will tell us the actual content type of the file and ignore the extension. Normally, I would recommend we use MIME content type instead of this, what we did on line 16. The problem is this function, for some reason, isn't supported on DreamHost. If you use MIME content type, you get an error saying, you'll get an error saying undefined function. So on DreamHost, for some strange reason, and there may be a workaround, but I've yet to discover it. If anyone discovers how to get MIME content to work on DreamHost, please let me know and I'll share that with the class. Okay. So for our purposes, we're just going to do this. This is probably the correct way of doing, more correct way of doing it. Okay. The last thing we need is a variable called tmp_name. This will tell us where the file is in cache. So these values, name, size, type, and TMP name, these are built into PHP. These are not variables I've created. Yeah, those are PHP. They're part of the files collection. If we looked up the documentation, what properties are part of the PHP files collection, we would see these. So I didn't create them. PHP did. So we also want to see where is that file? Where did the server save that file temporarily? So same lines of code again, we're just replacing type, size, name with TMP name this time. Now when I refresh, I should get 4 values. So it looks something like this. It puts it in a TMP directory, it prefixes it with PHP, and then there's kind of a random string of letters and numbers with an extension .tmp. If I refresh and upload the exact same file, that value will change every time. If I resend, notice I always get, even although I'm uploading the same file, goes to a different temp spot for every single upload attempt. Now remember, this is temporary. We don't want the file to live here. We want the file to go to our uploads folder. So we need to take the file out of cache and move it into the uploads folder with a PHP script. Otherwise, that file will eventually time out and get removed. So move from cache to the lesson 10 uploads folder. PHP has a lot of function names and things that aren't very descriptive. Fortunately, the function for doing this is super descriptive. It's called move uploaded file. I like that. And its function takes two parameters. Where is the file now? And where do you want to save it to? And with what name? So we can change the name here, which we'll do next. We won't do it yet. So we already have a value that represents, what variable represents where the file is right now in cache. Yeah, it's our temp name variable from line 19. So we're going to move it from temp name, which will be C blah, 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 PHP / ABC123.temp. We want to put it into our uploads folder. And for now, we won't rename the file. Whatever the original name is, we'll just keep. So if we upload profile.jpg, we'll save it in the uploads folder with the same name, profile.jpg. So this should store that file permanently now in our uploads folder. That's what we want. So let's try this out, and then we'll look in our uploads folder and see if the file we're uploading, we can upload different kinds of files. Let's see if they actually get created. So I'm going to go back. I'll pick a JPEG first and upload it. And now in my uploads folder, there's my JPEG timestamp now. If you're using DreamHost, in FileZilla, when you open your uploads folder, you won't see the file right away. You have to right click and choose refresh. And then the file should show up. Okay, so you have to refresh in order to see any new uploads. If I pick a Word document and upload, tells me I have a XMS Word. Now I want to show you, so now I have two documents. I'm going to upload this one again. So you'll notice right now it's timestamp 1051. Here's where our unique names come in. If I go back to my pictures, I pick the same AAA.jpg and upload and go back. Notice my timestamp, right? So my latest upload overwrote the earlier one. So we probably want some method of making sure that that file name is unique. There's many different ways we could do that. What options would we have? How could we make sure that one file doesn't overwrite another file with the same name? We got lots of options. Chad? Okay, so yeah, we could track them in the database, have an uploads table, and let the database generate an ID first, and then before we save the file, attach that ID. Great idea. In fact, I've done that with a shopping cart before where customers uploaded photos. Every item they bought, I took the item order ID from the database and I renamed the photo to that order ID. So that way I would know which picture went with which order. That's kind of exactly what you're suggesting. So that might work. Any other suggestions of how we could make sure that we always have a unique name?
It is kind of right something, so somebody could put like with their file, like with whatever the name was, just kind of overwrote it and gave it like kind of like what we did before with the passwords. I mean, you're not asking for something.
Yep, we could. We could use some kind of random generator. There's a random function in PHP that would generate a random number, for example. We could do that. Any other thoughts? We could use the user ID if only, but again, only if authenticated users. I like to do something similar. What I want to do, I'm going to do is use the session ID to create a unique name. So our session automatically, the server automatically generates a random and unique session ID for every user's visit to our site. So what I often do is use the session ID as the first part of the file name, and then I keep the original file name at the end. So it looks something like this. So first we call session start, right? We can't access the session at all without calling session start. Then I'm going to create a variable called final name. So my name variable is the original name. What I want to do is use the session, and there's a built-in function called session ID. This will give me the user's session ID that's generated on the server. And then I'm going to append a dash and then my original name. So if we now all upload profile.jpg with this, we're all going to have a unique session ID in front of it. But we still can see the original name, which is also useful. Because if the user says, hey, I uploaded a file with this name, at least we know what that file is called on our user's computer if we don't overwrite that part of it. We're keeping the original name, but we're adding something unique at the beginning. So now, actually, I'm going to move this code. We want to do this. We need to create the unique name. And then what would we need to change here? So instead of using name, we'll use our final name instead. So save it, but include the session ID as part of that file name. Now, this won't be completely, totally 100% unique. We'll talk about why in a minute. But it should generally, for most sites, be good enough. So I'm going to go back and re-upload my AAA.jpg. In fact, I can just hit refresh and then continue, and it'll repost the same form data. So when I resend it now, and look, notice my version uploaded at 1052, it's still here. And notice my file. Here's my unique session ID, dash, and then I have the original file name. So this means if I open a different browser, you know what, I'll go to Chrome. So if I go to a different browser and upload the same file, my AAA.jpg, notice now I have two of them. This was my Firefox upload. This was my Chrome upload of the same file. Now, if in Firefox I upload the same file again, now I will be overwriting mine because my session is still active. You can decide, this may not work in your application. You may decide every file has to be unique. Absolutely always. Personally, I think, well, if it's the same user in the same browser session uploading the same file, they probably want to overwrite the old file. So so my Firefox version's timestamped 1057. This is it. My session ID starts with US6. So if I do this again in Firefox, my Firefox version's been overwritten. But that's okay because I'm the same user, same session, same browser, same file. If you didn't want to do this, you could also, for example, include something like a date and time stamp in the file name. Get the current date, time, convert it to a string, and include that as well. The other reason I like using the session IDs is it will show me if I need to look, if a user's uploaded a whole bunch of files, I can tell all the files that were uploaded at the same time by the same user. So for example, let me log in and show you how this might be useful. So that's what I'm doing here. All of these images have the session ID as part of them. So if they say to me, we're having problems with the photos we uploaded for this property, if I show you their images directory, probably take a bit to load because there's so many images here. So I have a separate file for listings. So this is all the images that they upload. It'll take a little bit to open because it's a big directory. Right. So here are the images they're uploading. So because I've got the same session ID, I can tell if they had a problem, all of these are uploaded at the same time, which might make debugging useful. And Tyler, they've done what you've suggested. They've actually given mostly search engine friendly names, right? If someone searches that address, those images might get found by search engine, which is great. But I've also uniquely, so they've named them uniquely, but I've also made sure I've got the session ID here as well. So this isn't, using the session ID, this isn't the only option we have, but it works. This is usually what I use. If you want to find another way of naming the images uniquely, by all means, go ahead. You know, as Chad suggested, using an ID in the database or using some other method, using the user ID if we want, including the user ID, we could do that too. Okay. So up to you, but we should be coming up with something so that we're not just saving the files with their original name. Otherwise, we're going to have problems and we're going to wind up having users overwrite each other's files, which is a nightmare. We certainly don't want that. Any questions about what we're doing here? Is there anything that it doesn't make sense or isn't clear or you want to ask about before we move on to our next piece?
The name that you use, the variable, is that referring to, oh yeah, it's just referring back to.
Yeah, so this is the original name. So whatever the file is called on the user's computer, we're grabbing that. And then we're keeping it, but we're just putting a unique identifier as a prefix on the beginning. And you don't have to use that. You could use any kind of structure format you like. This is typically how I do it. Any other questions? I don't know where Artem is. Usually he's good for 3 or 4 questions a class. Good questions. Okay, so here's our simple file upload example. We're done with this one. So what we want to do is we want to integrate this file upload functionality with our beer store, that we can upload and display images in our pages we've already built. So we don't have to build any new pages. We're just going to modify the beer pages we already have. We'll leave the uploads folder. The other thing we're going to do is let's make an images folder. So I'm going to make a new folder called images, and we want to put the beer logos in here.
I'm getting the files in the folder, but I'm getting that.
You're getting an error. Is it saying because it doesn't like you calling session start? Yeah, I guess on mine, yeah. If you're getting an error that it says it can't call session start, then yep, use OB start and OB flush.
Sorry, was that in this folder inside the upload folder?
No, just in the root,
Okay.
just beside, same level. So we used uploads for that first example, but we'll use images for the beer logos. It's up to you where you store them. You may also have it like on this site, I have a main images folder for all the images on the site. And then inside of it, I have a listing subfolder. So those are for any files that the client uploads, right? Any pictures of the houses they're selling would go in the listings. You know, the images has like the logo and header images and things like that. So just make an images subfolder. So the first thing we want to do is we need to modify our beer page. I think I'm still logged in. So what we want on our beer page, we got to add 2 things here. What 2 changes do we need to make on this page? Yep, we'll need a input type equals file for the upload. We have to do something that will be invisible in order to make it work. That'll be on the next page. Oh, yes, we will need to do that. What about on this form? Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you, Omar. We need to make one hidden change to the HTML in order to do this. We can add an input type equals file, but what takes care of this conversion of the file? We're going to need to add this attribute to our form on our beer page. Otherwise, our file is not going to get converted to binary. So on beer.php, first thing we're going to do is scroll down to our form tag. Because this form's now going to include a file input, we need to add the encoding type. So add that attribute in our form, encoding type equals multi-part form data. If we don't do that, no file will get copied, just gets ignored. So that's on beer. So find your form tag. We already have method post and action is save beer, that stuff. So just what I've highlighted in blue, we want to add inside that opening form tag. On beer.php. And once we have that, we'll scroll down our form, and above our submit button, we want a new input type equals file. So after my price, I'll put on an input type equals file. I'll give it a class to move it over. I want it to be in line with the other input. So shift it off 2 columns to the right. We don't need a label for it. Oh, actually, sorry. Yes, we do. And what do we want to call this? We're going to need a new column in our database, as Omar suggested in a minute. I've already given you the script for this. Oh, no, I didn't. Okay. Let's call this input type equals file name equals logo. ID equals logo. And we'll have to put this in a field set with a label. There's all our new HTML. So not only are we going to want to upload the logo to the images, but we also want to attach the name of that logo to our beer record. So that means, as Omar said, we need to modify our beers table, right? Because we want to link the file name. The file name has to be part of that beer listing now. So when we load the beer, we can go look up that file name and display the logo. So we're going to need to log into our database for a minute. So I'm going to open up my SQL Workbench. I'll log into my server. I'm going to run my use command to get connected. So all we want to do is run an alter table command. But here's my beers table right now. This is what it looks like. We've got these columns, right? Name, alcohol content, domestic light, and price. We have no place to store an image name. So we're going to alter table beers. We'll add a column called logo. I'm going to execute this command, which will add one column at the end. And now when I look at my table again, we now have this empty logo column at the end.
Why we are using one chart instead of blob?
Great question. Okay. We actually have two choices, and both are correct. We could use blob instead of varchar. So why would we? What would be the advantage, or why would we use blob?
Specialized for the file upload. It's a binary form, so you can upload anything.
Okay, so we have two ways of storing the image or any file uploads of our users doing. If we use the data type of blob, binary large object, we can store the image itself right in the database, which is the way some sites work. That's one option. Our other option is just to use a string, a text field instead. There's no right or wrong. I prefer to use text fields. Now you could do it as a blob if you like. What would you think would be the benefit of storing it? If we just store it as a text field, what will we store in that column for these values? Yeah, we would just store the name of the file. So I find that's more efficient and ultimately for a large site cheaper than storing the actual files themselves, which might be very large, directly in our database table. Why might it be more efficient and faster and cheaper just to store the name of the file rather than the image file itself?
The server space and just everywhere, so you don't have to pay for extra space in yours as well.
Right. So storage wise, it's much smaller to just store a name of the file than the actual file itself, which could be very large. Plus, we're storing it twice. That's right. We've got a copy of the file here, and then we also have it in the database. And if we're storing all those files in the database, querying the table is going to be a lot slower eventually. So there's nothing wrong with using it, a blob, and storing the file in the database. If you prefer that method, that's fine. Personally, in all the years I've been building applications, I've never stored any files directly in my database. I just store the file name in the database and then link to it. But there's no right or wrong. You can do it however you prefer. It's a very good question. Thank you for raising that. Okay. So now I realize your beer records may be a little different than mine, but for the 6 beers I have in my database, I went, found all the logos last night, sized them all, cropped them nicely so that they're all nice 300 by 300 pixel logos, and they're available for your downloading pleasure right here. So if you click on beer logos, it'll open up this zip file and just save that file to somewhere in your computer, like save it to your pictures, your desktop. Don't save it into lesson 10 because we don't want to save the images directly. We want to upload them through our upload page. So when you extract them, you're going to have these 6 logos. It doesn't matter if you don't have all the exact same logos or you have different beer records, doesn't matter. These were the 6 we put in here that I did some very intense Google searching on and cropping. So we've changed our beer page. So now if I go to edit a beer, cool. Oops, I need to just fix the formatting, but now it says, prompting me to upload a logo, which is good. The one thing I didn't do here in my field set was I didn't set the class on my label of call small 2 to make sure that this is aligned with the rest of my form. Looks goofy off to the left. It should be aligned with the rest of the page. So I just used the same class. Yeah, that's better. Right, everything's aligned nicely, thanks to Bootstrap. So this page is done. Well, we'll come back to it because what we want after we upload the photo later on, if the photo's been uploaded, we'll want to display the logo on this page. But we don't have a logo yet, so we can't do that. So we'll come back and show the logo once we get our uploads working. Okay, so this was so we added this and we added this encoding type attribute. So our page is now set up so we can upload, but we're going to need to make a bunch of changes on our save page, right? Because right now we can save a beer, but our logo processing doesn't happen. So we need to write similar code to what we did on our save upload page. We need to process the file, save it to our images folder, but then we also want to take the final name and modify our SQL so that when we add or edit a beer and upload a logo, that the file name gets included in our database. So when we look up that beer, we can display the proper logo along with it. So we need to modify our save beer page. We don't need to take anything out of here. We're just going to need to add a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to leave what's here and leave my validation. But after we're validated all the other fields, now we want to check, first of all, do we have a photo? And if we do, is that photo a JPEG or a PNG? The images folder. And then we'll need to modify our two SQL commands to include the name of the logo. So after our price, we will validate and process photo upload if we have one. So we'll say if not empty files logo name. That means some file got uploaded and that file has a name. If that value isn't empty, then we'll do similar things to what we did on our previous page. First, we'll grab the name. And we'll get and check the type. So we'll see what file type it is. Again, we're not using MIME content type, we're really just checking the extension. So yes, technically a user could fool us by changing their file extension. So we'll say if type is not equal to, well, I have to think about. So type is not equal to image/PNG. So we'll need a bracket around that. And type is also not equal to image/JPEG. So this means the file is not a JPEG and also not a PNG. In this case, they've uploaded a file, but it's not a valid file type. So we'll display a message. The logo must be JPEG or PNG. And we'll say OK is equal to false. So we'll stop our process and say things are invalid.
That's supposed to be or rather than and. JPEG, it's not going to be a PNG.
Right, okay. However, if it's a JPEG, it won't be, I may have to, okay, I have to rethink the condition because it can't be both. So we have to rewrite this condition a little bit.
If you change it or, let's say if it's not PNG, it's going to be false. If it's not JPEG, it's going to be also false. So it's going to be false eventually. If you say, let's say it's going to be PNG, it's going to be false, but it's a JPEG file. So the type is going to be returned true, right?
But if we say or, if it's a PNG, it's not a JPEG, so it's false. So we need to think about how to make this condition.
We can check as an equal maybe, then. Or then equal. If it's equal to PNG,
Okay. All right. So if we say yes, okay, if it's equal to PNG or there's our symbol for or, equal to JPEG. Right, in this case, we'll process the file. Sorry. So I'm gonna move this, I'm gonna cut this. We'll need an else condition. Thank you. So if it's a PNG or JPEG, we'll process it, otherwise we'll show an error message. So it's a PNG or a JPEG. Now we can save the file. Valid type. So now I'll create my final name variable. Same way we did before. So take the original name, stick the session ID and a hyphen on the beginning. And then I'll move uploaded file. I guess we also need the temp name. To create our unique name, figure out where it is in cache. And this time we're saving it to images. The line 65 will save that file to our images folder if the user's uploaded a PNG or JPEG extension. If they don't, we'll get an error saying that it's invalid. So I'm going to try this out with an invalid file first. We haven't saved to the database yet, but we're just seeing whether our file upload is and our type checking will work. So I'm going to try uploading a text file or a Word document first. And I should get a message saying the logo must be a JPEG or PNG. So I'll browse. Let me pick something invalid like a Word document. So I get this message saying the logo must be JPEG or PNG. If I go back and actually browse to a actual image, like this one, that error is not there. And if I look in my images folder, it did save the file. I can delete this one, I don't need it here, but it's checking our type properly and saving. So if we have a file upload, which we may not, the user may not have a logo, that's okay, the logo is not required. But if we have a logo, check what type it is and make sure it's a PNG or JPEG. And if it is, add the session ID onto it as a name and save it to the images folder. Otherwise, show the user an error. So this saves the file, but it still isn't connected. The logo is not connected up to our database at all. So that's what we're going to need to do next. We're going to need to modify our insert command, and we need to modify the update command. Are there any questions about this piece? Anybody still need this? Priyank, did you have a question?
What if we upload the JPEG files with capital JPEG?
That's a great question. What will it do? Let's try that, right? If my file extension is still JPG, maybe I have one that's a capital. If not, I can create one. I've used JPG, or I could even use JPEG. We'll try that as well. Let's see what happens. So when I go, whoops, here's an issue. I overwrote my name variable. We better change that variable. I called it name. We already have a variable called name. We should probably call that variable logo instead. Whoops. Here, I'm overwriting my variable from up here. So I'll call that logo instead of name. And Priyank, let's try what you've suggested. So what beer was this actually? Oh, this was Corona Light. I better change that back. I'm going to try with my capital J just to see. So notice, killed the extension. So it did save it. It knows it's a JPEG, but it did something weird. It took off my extension on the end. Okay. So we'll have to be careful about that. Okay, I'll delete that one. So now we need to modify this. Both for our insert and our update, we want to process the logo if the user uploaded one. So we might insert, we want to add logo here, and we want to add a logo parameter here. In our update statement, I'll do the same. After price, we'll set the logo column equal to a logo parameter. So I've added logo into both of these. I need to do one more thing. If I run the code right now, I'm going to get an error. Why will I get an error if I run it this way? And what will that error say? Right, it'll say I have a mismatch in the number of parameters in my SQL and the number of parameters I'm binding. Right, if we're going to create a logo parameter, we need to populate it with the value. So we want to fill our logo parameter with our final name variable, right? We want the version that includes the session ID. It's 255 characters. The other thing I need to do is I need to initialize this variable to null in mine. Otherwise, I'll get an error on mine. You won't get an error on the web server. So add logo to our SQL and bind it just like all our other parameters. Now when we save a beer, our logo name might be null if there's no upload, but if there is an upload, it'll have that file name included and sent to our database. Up at the top, I'm just going to initialize. You don't need this step on Dreamos, just the way my PHP is configured on my WAMP server. So let's see now if we can add a logo to a beer, see what happens. So I'll go to my Corona Light. I'll click Browse, open my beer logos. Here's my Corona Light logo, which I've named descriptively. So now the question is, there's our file. Interesting, it still didn't, to figure out where my extension went. Why does it not know? And let's look in my database. Oh, whoop. Because here it's taking the name of my beer. It needs to be taking the name of my logo file. So it's our session ID plus the name of the logo. I better do that again. So I changed this line from name to logo. Priyank, that's what happened when we tried the uppercase. It was, I didn't change that variable. We'll try again. I'll upload Corona Light. Yeah, so now I have the Corona Light file copied to my images, but now the real test is that image actually in the database? So if I run my beers query again, now we've got that beer record attached. If I want to go ahead and upload the other logos, I can do that. So now in my images folder, I've got 3 images in my database. I've got those 3 logos attached. May as well go do with the other ones. And then we'll want to change our beer page so the logos actually get displayed. So now I have 6 files all with that same session ID, which is okay. And now all my beers have logo. If I want to add a new beer, we can check it for adding as well. I'll just add a test one and then I'll get rid of it. Test. If I upload some other picture, there's my logo being saved and in my database. So our images are working, our image names are being attached when we insert or update, which is the result we want. I'll just delete that. I don't need that one. So our code on this page is complete. We still want to modify our beer page because we're uploading the logos, but those logos never show up on our website. The whole point of uploading them is so that users can actually, other users can actually see those logos. So we just need to make a quick change on our beer.php. We want to add 2 things, one thing at the top and one thing down at the bottom. what will we need to do to get that beer logo to show up? So what I want, when I edit a beer, underneath the browse, between the browse and save, I want the logo to show up if we have one. So what will we need down here to display the logo? What kind of HTML tag are we going to need? Yeah, we're going to need an image tag. So on our beer page, after my upload, but before my button, let's create an image tag and give it a title of logo. What's the source? Where are we going to find the logo? What folder is it in? Yeah, in images / yeah, we'll have to create a variable up above. So we'll put in PHP, kind of just like we did here, right? With our domestic, light, and price, we used PHP echo right inside of that HTML tag. Let's echo out $logo in the source attribute, just the same way we echoed out PHP values in our text box values. Now I can do this right now, but our logo variable is blank. We're going to have to populate that logo variable up at the top when we're populating all our other variables: beer ID, price, light, domestic. We also will probably want to put in an if statement here because we may or may not have a logo. If there is no logo, we don't want to show an image, right? There's nothing to display, so we don't want an image tag showing nothing. So maybe what we'll do is, well, we'll leave it like that for now. Where would I have to fill the logo? Where would we do it? Where would we write that code to fill our logo variable? Yeah, inside our for each when we're filling all the other values. So right after the price, we can say our logo variable equals our beer logo value. So if there's a logo in the database, copy that file name into $logo. So we'll try the page like this. We'll need to adjust it a little bit, but this should show us a logo for any beer that we've added a logo to. And that's inside of the curly brace, along with all of the other fields. So now if I refresh, it's not quite where I want it. I want to reposition it a bit. But it's showing up, which is good. We could use CSS, as you mentioned, to style it. So maybe what I'll do is let's create a div. We want to move it over, so we'll use offset 2, so it goes right underneath our browse button. I'll wrap that in a div. We can also give our image a bootstrap class of, I think it has a class for images called thumbnail. Let's try attaching it. Should give a little border around it, I think. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Oh no, that class is used for anchor tags, so that's not useful. But it aligns it better. We could actually look in Bootstrap for classes used for images for doing styling. I'll take a quick peek. Go to components and Do we have images here? Oh, those are themes. All right, we may have to leave it for now. Unless I can quickly find one. Oh, here, images. So we could apply some of these classes. If we want, oh, let's try that. Okay, we'll try IMG circle. We'll try that one. See what that does.
You do IMG thumbnail as well.
Yep, so it rounds it. We can do whatever we want. Yeah, it's probably a bit big. I wonder if we apply both circle and thumbnail. Hopefully get a circular thumbnail. Let's see. If we put thumbnail first. I don't know if that'll work.
We just try setting the size.
Sure, we could do that as well. We could also put our own. All right, I'll just leave it as thumbnail because the circle's too big, I think. It's the same. Now, this works, which is great. The only problem is when I do this, right, I'm getting this, and we've got this blank image tag because we may not have an image. So what we need to do is we just need to wrap this inside of an if statement. We want to open PHP tags and say if not empty $sign logo. Right? So we want to print this stuff only if we have a logo. And that should make that error go away. So if we don't have a logo, we just skip that section. Don't bother trying to render an image that doesn't exist. I kind of like my circle. So now if I add a beer, I don't get that error anymore. Now we could go into any beer. Ah, okay. Hang on. What did I break? Oh, something's wrong. I broke something there. Oh. So now instead of doing PHP echo, I would just append on this way. We're already inside of a PHP echo. Because we're already inside of an echo command, I don't need another set of PHP tags inside it. We're already inside PHP tags. So two different ways. Here we're injecting PHP into an HTML value. Here we're injecting HTML into a PHP echo command. We can do either. I think that should fix things. Yeah. What did I do wrong? So now we can upload and display. This is part of what I want you to do in your assignment. You only need to be able to upload one thing, but in your admin panel, part of part 2 is you need to give the user the ability to upload a new logo and have that logo appear in the header. Right? So it will replace or overwrite the old logo. You don't need a gallery. You don't need to have different multiple uploads, just one. We didn't get to doing our logo gallery today. That's okay, that's fine. We can probably do that at the start of class next week. So what I want to add, well, just to show you from my Monday class, what we'll add. So here was our main games page. We could go in, display the cover of the video games. But we also quickly built, the formatting isn't quite finished. We built a gallery that selects all of the images in a loop and prints them out. And each one becomes a link that will take you to that game. So I want to do this with our beers as well. Have a gallery that will show all of the beers logos, and each one is clickable and will take us to our beer page. And that's basically what a Facebook photo album is, right? It's a query that selects all of the records in the database, all of the image names in one particular album, loops through and generates a list of image tags which are displayed dynamically like this one. So in effect, we should be able to create any kind of photo gallery now with that code. So it'll be a simple loop. We'll write a query. We'll select all of the image names from the beers table. And in a loop, in our for each, we'll display a new image tag in every record in our for each. Good question. We didn't build that function. I want to delete the image. Good question. We didn't get a chance to do that. We'll maybe have a chance to do that next week. The other thing we might want to think about is, right, if I delete one of these beers, it will delete the record from my database, but it doesn't actually delete the image. So what we may want to do on that delete page is first go to the database, get the logo name, delete the file from the images folder first, and then delete the beer from the database. Right? We probably don't want to keep all those old uploads for a record that doesn't exist anymore. We may want to remove it. Okay. So what we'll do, maybe we'll start class next week with adding our gallery. We'll look at being able to delete, how we do either delete the image or delete the record and the image. And then the other thing, what we want to add here is we're going to want to add a search, keyword search. So if we add, you know, for example, 10 more light beers, we want to let the user search on the word light and have this list be filtered. So anything that doesn't match the search disappears. And then we want to make it so we can do sorting. Click on any column heading and sort the beers ascending or descending based on any column we choose. So we're going to do those. We'll implement those features as well next week. Okay, so you have 2 more weeks for part 2 of the assignment. As I said, you know, your video demo is here on Blackboard. And if you want help in office hours, please just book a slot.
Are you upload this code to GitHub? I think it might work.
Yeah, I will upload today's to GitHub. Yes. I'll do that shortly. All right, that's it. Have a great long weekend, everybody. And I may see you guys tomorrow morning in Tom's class.